Happy Thursday. Happy Teaching Tips Thursday. I am Randy Pratt. I'm the VP of Sales and Marketing with Masterbooks and New Leaf Publishing Group. Seated beside me is Brittany Pratt. Brittany is my daughter. She is also a publicist at Masterbooks, and she works alongside me with social media and the publicity and whatnot.
Our friend Jess is back. We missed you too, Jess. I thought that last week. I haven't seen Jess on in a little while.
You even said that.
I did.
And if you're watching on Facebook, be sure to comment as well and let us know that you're here. If you're new to Masterbooks or to the app, we'd like to welcome you in the app and encourage anybody who hasn't joined the app to join the app. It's just a great place to connect with other people. I think it's a real time saver. What I like about the app is when I click into it, I can go through the day pretty quick, and I don't get caught up in a lot of drama. I don't get caught up in a lot of distractions. I see my tribe, and I'm able to connect with my tribe. It feels good to do that, and I do it pretty much, 3 or 4 times a day. I just click into the app and go through and see if there's any place that I can add value. But we have a fantastic team there. Missy and Amy and Desiree and Rachel are in there, and then a lot of the moderators from the Facebook group also jump in. We have authors that are in there, so it's just a really good place to connect. I also love that nobody can stalk you. Like, you get a little picture, that's it, right? You click on the picture, it's still a little picture. It's not pictures of your kids in your house, the street, the pool party, your tattoos, any of that. It's none of that type of stuff. It's just we're all here on the app talking about it. So.
Hey to Krista Clark and Elizabeth Gillard and Mandy Ferris. I know some of you were here earlier in the week, so it's good to see you again.
Yeah, and I don't know why, but Facebook lately hasn't been giving us very good. They just haven't been showing us the comments that come in. So we do see them in the app. So if you have the app and you switch over and you ask questions and stuff, we love participation. I'm almost prone not to want to go towards recorded video because I just so much love the interaction of seeing how people are responding and the questions they have. And so I'm the one that keeps pulling it back saying, no, I don't want to give up the lives. Like, I really like the live experience. And now that Facebook seems to be moving more towards not giving us that interaction, I don't enjoy it as much. So.
Yeah. Hey, Kim Turbin, it's good to see you again. Jenny, excited to see this live. I'm new to Masterbooks. Welcome. We're excited that you're here. Feel free to ask questions throughout the entire live, and I'll be reading them and keeping up with them, so I can ask Randy any questions that you got, and we can have a fun discussion about it.
So today is Teaching Tips. Teaching Tips is just where we try to share some information, things I wish I'd known, some lessons we've learned, some things I'm working on learning, just in case it's valuable and provides any kind of help. And as we always say, eat the meat, spit out the bones. If something doesn't resonate, you don't feel a witness to it, ignore it. Don't worry about it. If you can pick away 1 or 2 tips that make your life better, and it saves you some of the experiences that I had to learn the hard way, or we had to learn the hard way as a family, by all means, we encourage you to take them. So today we're going to talk about neuroplasticity and how it can make your life and your homeschool better.
It's an interesting title. I'm curious to know.
Yep. What are you curious to know?
I'm curious to know how it relates to homeschooling.
Well, what is neuroplasticity? Neuroplasticity it's the study of, or it's not the study of, but it's how the brain grows and changes, how connections are made, the synaptic connections are made between neurons, when memories are made, how our habits are formed, how connections are made, how they grow, they develop, how neurotransmitters and hormones tend to play a factor in this, and then when they're not used, how they begin to dissolve and fade. And so I think sometimes homeschooling is so much thought of as, here's a textbook, right? You're going to do advanced 2 writing strands. The schedule's in the front, go do it. And then we evaluate that experience based on that. without looking at the whole child, the whole experience, the classroom. All of these things weigh into the success of a homeschool. I have a bit of a pet peeve. I really do. Today I had one. Today I had a YouTube video that just triggers me. Because here's what they do. They use masterbooks for 6 months, then they post a video why I quit using masterbooks. It's so complicated. And I give this little rant every time. It's complicated. It's not just about a textbook. It's about the teacher. It's about the student. It's about past experiences. It's about understanding the whole child. Did you place? I mean, there's so many variables about that. And one of the problems that we have in this day and age is anybody can post a video and be considered kind of a thought leader or an expert. So my advice to everybody as you look at homeschooling your child is look at multiple resources. Don't just watch one video. Don't just see one experience. Look for multiple experiences, because that's just something that I think is so important in this day and age, that we educate ourselves on topics. And there's a lot of information, and that can be something that we have to decipher through. But anyways, let's get back to...
Real quick, Jess said, those YouTube videos annoy me. Haha, like, why would you want to quit masterbooks? I'm a little biased, though, I suppose. Also, hey to Keely, Hannah, and Mindy, thanks for joining us today. We're happy to see you. There
are reasons that you wouldn't want to use masterbooks. We'll talk about that in the future. And I think we could do that. There is a tribe that understands the concepts of masterbooks, and even what we're talking about today fits so well into masterbooks. Okay, so neuroplasticity, the way we process information, we develop. Let's do it this way. Imagine, if you will, so when you're young, you come to this field, and it's almost like there's hardly anything in the field, right? Let's say there's a field that just, it's been taken care of for years, and it's almost brand new. Maybe there's just a little bit of grass developing in it, and you've got to get to the other side of that field. So you walk across it, and you make a path. And the more you create that path, I've talked about this in the past, but I'm going to develop it out a little bit more. The more you make that path, the easier it is to go. And as that field begins to grow and you know, it gets harder to walk through the field, right? You don't look for new ways, you take the paths that are established. Well, that's the way our brain works. When we have a memory, or we make connections, or we're learning something, it's almost like the neurons in our brain begin to connect. And it's called synaptic connections that are made between neurons, and there's an electrical charge that fires. And it doesn't take just one connection to make the charge. There are 100 billion neurons in our brains. And there are parts of our brains that actually continue to build to make neurons. And in those areas, we actually can make new connections. We can change habits. We can create habits, but we can change habits too. So these connections are made, and every time that pathway is used, the connection becomes stronger. And so when you have tens or hundreds of these connections, when they make a connection, the pathway is strengthened. Now, add to it a neurotransmitter. Neurotransmitters, when, like, the brain chemistry, when something is exciting, right? Let's say, okay, I can ask you, what happened to you 2 Tuesdays ago? Most people would try to have to figure back. Can you tell me everything that happened 2 Tuesdays ago? Well, we went through a death in the family. I think it was 2 Tuesdays ago. And I can tell you almost everything that happened that day. From breakfast all the way to midnight, through the night when we drove to Tennessee. Brittany and I drove through the night, and I can tell you all that happened. I can tell you what we talked about. Why? Why can I tell you about that Tuesday? Because in my brain, the transmitters were some of the more powerful transmitters that, and I'm not an expert in this, so I don't have like all the technology and stuff like that, but I'd encourage you to do more research in it. But anyways, that experience, because of what we were going through, created much stronger memories in those neurons that are there. And through that whole week, like, I have solid memories of what was going on, because those connections had transmitters that were helping strengthen that bond and that connection. Okay, so how does this apply to homeschool, you may be asking?
I am asking that question.
So all of these pathways that we have, they're like, it's just like, okay, so in 5th grade, I was telling Brittany earlier, when I was in school, I was actually, like, I enjoyed math. I remember doing math in 3rd grade. I had a crush on my teacher, and she would give me attention for learning my times tables. And I remember learning my times tables and my division tables like before most of the other students, because I was going to get acknowledged by somebody that I respected. And to have her say, wow, you're awesome, like that was motivation for me. That motivated my brain. And I enjoyed math because there was a reward loop that came with it. Then I remember very painfully, 2 grades later in 5th grade, I won't shame the teacher, but I feel like I should, but 2 years later when I came to long division, and he was one of the most miserable people for motivating people. He felt that shame and humiliation would be the better way to get somebody motivated. And that's when all of a sudden I associated learning math and math concepts with negative connotations. And I remember also my mom she didn't enjoy math either, and so she would just feed that a little bit with, you're not good at math like I'm not good at math. We're not math people, we're social people. And all of a sudden the connections began to be formed. And so every time I came to a new math concept, I felt the pain and the anxiety of this math experience that I had. And that was my new pathway, if you will, through the field. And so we see this all the time, right? We do reviews. Brittany does a lot of the product reviews, and you're on social media a lot. And you see where families come against us, like 4th, 5th grade. All of a sudden, the student is just melting down. Temper tantrums, meltdowns.
Yeah. Jenny said, children absorb and remember more when their excitatory receptors are excited.
Yes, yes. But now that can be good or bad excitement. So when you think about, like, my receptors were excited, but it was excited because there was trauma and pain and anxiety. And so this pathway that I had that said anytime I approach a math concept, I'm not good at it, I shut down and I avoid learning math, became a struggle that I had to go through. And every time it was reinforced continually, because nobody really understood that what my trauma was that I had a bad experience with a teacher rather than a bad experience with math. And so there was never a reset. It was just, in fact, what happened was I went then into a private school, and I had to go back a couple years in math, which just added more to the loop and created more of a challenge like that and reinforced that pathway that I had. So, do you have any questions?
Yeah, so that being your experience, then would you say, like, then that's why each child is so unique, is that they're just the culmination of their experiences and their different, I guess experiences or moments with different situations. So your experience with math is going to be a lot different than my experience with math. So your approach to math is going to be a lot different than mine.
Yes, yes. And I think that that's one thing that, homeschool families need to embrace. There is no average. Average does not exist with our students. Every child is unique. I've done a video on average in the past. There's a great book called The End of Average, which studies the faulty logic of trying to develop products or an education system based around average, the concept of average. So we need to approach our students as individuals, and even though we may recognize some things in our students, even like comparing siblings, there's a complete difference in each child, and we need to embrace that individual approach. And I think, the education system is more factory based, and we tend to say, well, here's grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, and we live in a world like that. But maybe we can almost train ourselves and our students to think of of it more like north, south, east, and west, right? So grade 1 is north. We're heading in a northward direction. And it's not necessarily what is north. When do you reach north? At what point, do I actually reach north? So we continue heading north in that. And then grade 2 is heading east. And so we're heading east. Not necessarily you've achieved this level and this level, because every child is going to be different in their approach. So, I can't still...
There's one comment I think over on Facebook. Sarah said hello. So hello, we're happy that you're joining us. Sorry
Absolutely.
that our comments aren't working on Facebook. I know there's some talk going over. Hi Sunshine, she just joined us. Irina joined. Hey, it's good to see you again. She's here on Tuesday. It's good to see you here.
Awesome. Okay, so yeah, if you have questions or you have a situation, feel free to post, because we'd be happy to kind of break it down and talk about it with our 2 cents. But our brains tend to work in a way that we look for things that are familiar. So when we come up to a field and we see that it's overgrown, in fact, see, the older we get, the more the field grows in and the harder it is to make new connections. That's why it's much easier to learn a language when you're younger, because you don't have as much overgrowth in the field. But the older we get, the harder it is, because you're having to go through more. If you think about it like learning a language or maybe learning an instrument, how many people say, well, I played trumpet when I was in school? And then you give them a trumpet and maybe they could play 2 or 3 notes, but they would never be able to read the music because they haven't practiced it and they haven't done it, and so those connections have dropped. Well, we look for the familiar, and we also look for the path of least resistance. Our brains are designed to conserve energy. So if there's already a path that's there, I'm going to try to take that path, as opposed to trying to forge a new path because the old path may have had pain. Again, if I was taking that path and a snake came out and bit me and I almost died from that experience, the next time I had to take that path, what would I feel? I would feel anxiety and pain, and so from all of that, we have the anxiety. So when we see a 4th or 5th grader come to a topic and all of a sudden they begin to shut down, we have to ask a few questions. What do you think they would be?
What am I, as a leader, doing that's affecting this situation?
I can't say that enough, right? I think I do that as a parent. I want to do that as a parent. I definitely try to do it as a leader in an organization. But anytime I see a breakdown, the first question I have to ask is, what am I doing to contribute to this? You get what you lead. I believe that so much. And so here's a breakdown. What am I doing? What am I doing to contribute to this? Am I leading effectively here? Because let's say with a topic like math, I bring my anxiety forward. So we've got to do math, and all of a sudden I feel apprehensive, I may be agitated, I may be angry. When we sit down at the table to learn a concept, what am I going to do? I'm going to convey that to you, and by osmosis, you're going to pick that up. And so I've got to be very careful to say, am I healthy here? When it comes to learning and teaching and creating a classroom environment and having emotional health, am I healthy so that I can have healthy students? That to me would be the first thing we have to look at.
Well, it would be an example, because you are the king of analogies, as we learned on Tuesday. Well, we always kind of knew that you were eloquent on Tuesday, and you gave a lot of really good analogies. Sometimes those analogies help us to understand and remember these things better. So what's an example of a situation like that for us as adults, where maybe somebody we're under their leadership and they're not serving well, and how that affects us?
Well, we often see as adults, we may feel justified to lose our tempers and to respond through a bad attitude, through just being negative and nasty, and then we begin to see our kids and we don't like that their behavior is the same thing. I think that's some place that I can look and say, well, how can I expect them to cope with stress effectively if their leader and example in life, me, can't cope with stress effectively? So, there's so much of we just want our kids to be perfect and do what we want, and we also want them to perform because it's inconvenient sometimes to have to lead. Leadership is so much harder than forcing. Like, I can drive my kids to do whatever I want them to do. I'm bigger. I control the variables. I control their food, I control their housing, I control their internet, I control their lives, right? So I can bully them into doing what I want to do. It doesn't last. I've never seen that parenting style last, because once the student becomes strong enough, independent enough, out from underneath my bully influence, they tend to leave that. It takes so much more work to lead. So I can't expect my kids to want to go to work if I don't want to go to work. I have to find ways to be healthy and explain the value in that to them.
Yeah. Mindy Prayers Ash said, let's say you don't handle math talk in the best way. How do you begin correcting that? I have a strong and a weak math student. I am not strong.
So let's break that down a little bit with, you're not strong in what? You're not strong in learning new concepts. You're not strong in math overall. Is there just certain components that you're a little bit nervous and apprehensive about? Sometimes we drive at the symptom and we don't really look at the root, like what's the main fear that happens. For me, the humiliation that I felt when I struggled with a topic and didn't quite understand it, and then I saw everybody looking at me as kind of the classroom dunce, that fear made me automatically retreat to a position of, I'm not good at math. That way you don't have any expectation of me. In fact, if I can divert and say, I'm not good at math, but I'm really good at language, now I've completely distracted you from the pain that I would feel with not being good at math. And so we have to kind of look at what is it that we're not good at, and then let's find a new way of communicating. Okay, so maybe sometimes I struggle with math concepts. The logic component of math is a challenge, but I'm really good at finding resources to overcome my challenges. So maybe I don't understand everything about math, but I'm really good at finding somebody who can help us understand. And so let's do that. When we struggle, let's not focus on the struggle. Let's focus on how we solve problems, because we're good at solving problems. And now my focus is, okay, math is giving us problems and we're going to find resources and people. It's not focused on the negative aspect of that. And then sometimes if the path has been negative, where we've gone down that path before and we felt the pain, I think it's easier to back up, retreat, and let's come to another place. Let's try to create a new path. Going back a level in math sometimes, and doing a level that you know the student is capable of doing, just to build that factor. Reducing the amount of work. So not worrying about grades and all that type of thing. Just let's do one page today, right? There's a whole concept of building habits based on teeny habits. Like if I want to be healthier and I want to start running, it's going to take my brain and too much energy to get around the fact that, okay, I'm going to run 2 miles. Now I might build myself up to do that once, but the pain of that isn't going to be lasting. So what they'll do is they'll say, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go put my shoes on. Every morning I'm just going to get up and go put my running shoes on. And that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to start my day with my running shoes, and I'll take them off and I'll go and get ready. And you do that until the habit is formed of putting on the running shoes. And then once you have that habit established, then you add another teeny habit to it. So now that I've done that, I'm going to go outside and I'm going to just go around the block, or I'm going to go up to the stop sign and back. And then I do that until that becomes a habit. And I continue building until the much larger habit is reinforced. We talked earlier about the overwhelm associated if you see too much too big, and then your brain kind of just retreats and you pull back completely.
Yeah, so I was telling him, I was like, okay, well, how does that work for somebody like me who working out, for example? I see, the picture of what I want to be versus where I am right now, and because it's too overwhelming, because I'm so detail oriented, it's too overwhelming for me to look at all the details and how do I get there. And so I just look at that end result and see that as a reflection of me as a failure. Like, I'm not that, so therefore I'm a failure. when I get lost in the details of the process instead of just embracing the process and trying to get to that end goal. I just view the end goal.
Right. And then, and the one way you can change that is to begin to break it down and say, here's what I need to do to get to this step. Let's break it down and just focus on this one component so that the full overwhelm isn't too much. And then when I come across something negative, like a trigger, I call them triggers, but triggers are really pathways that we've developed where we feel the experiences that are there. And sometimes we need to identify, okay, I once went this path and I got bit by a snake and it was scary, and so now every time I come down this path, I'm afraid of that experience. And then once we've identified, it's not the path I'm afraid of, it's the snake I'm afraid of. And so I can deal then with that. Carissa asked a good question about two kids who are very close in age, and they're beginning to, noticing their different strengths. Any tips on how as a leader to help them cope with those differences, helping that not to be as a painful comparison for either, but especially the older child? Yeah, I do actually. We are all different people. God in his magnificence decided, I'm not going to make everybody cookie cutter. They're going to have to rely on each other, right? It's two that keep each other warm. It's a strand of three that makes a strong string. I know I'm butchering the scripture, but we need each other. The individuality of, I'm competing against you and this person is better than I am in this thing. Now, what can happen is sometimes we can get attention for something that we did, and a sibling can see the other person get attention and immediately turn that into shame or turn that into envy. Those are sins that we have to deal with, where I need to rejoice in your victories, and I need to rejoice in the fact that you're different, because in a business, I don't want all designers. I need editors. I need people who are good at seeing the big picture and don't get lost in creating, designs. And I need people who are good at paying bills, and I need people who are good at managing and fixing issues, and I need people who can see how to help customers resolve their problems. Like, I need to have a team. Well, a family, especially in homeschooling, we are a team. We're different ages, but we're teams. And so when somebody begins to stand out in a subject and that becomes their strength and their skill, that doesn't mean the other student doesn't have the strength and the skill in it just because one does. It's not either or, right? There's just different levels. It's a spectrum. But what we can do is to begin to teach our family that these differences, these individual components, are valuable, and our family needs that. The older our family gets, Carissa, the more we realize everybody's individual strengths and skills are needed. When a crisis comes to our family, we need the ones who are a little bit less excitable and to kind of help keep the calm and keep things. And then we need those who are excitable to also help move us out of those places. And we need the skills of everybody participating. There is no perfect person. Outside of Jesus Christ, none of us are perfect. We're all working towards becoming more like Christ. And with our kids, it's the same concept. There's so many teaching opportunities in this. Because what happens in the church? Same thing happens in the church. What's the pastor judged on? How effectively he can engage and entertain a congregation. But not every good entertainer is a good pastor. Some pastors aren't good speakers and teachers, but man, if you're in the hospital and your family's struggling, they're there with you. You feel cared for, and you feel that you are shepherded. And then there's others who are just fantastic at teaching and leading. And we get this, we judge them based on their skills, as opposed to saying the body of Christ needs both. We need everybody participating. We need good teachers, and we need those teachers to embrace pastors. We don't like to do that. Our egos get in the way, and ego hurts us. And if we can teach our kids to be excited for each other as opposed to comparing and trying to find ways, I envy the attention they get, I envy their skill, and it hurts my pride. Deal with that. One of my sons, he's a mini me. And I recognized in him ego that that I had at his age and the negative effects it had. And him and I have talked a lot about emotional intelligence, and he's fortunate to have a coach who has done that. Because tell me,
he's the most emotional, healthy person in our family, and he's only 13.
what happens when you watched the game where his older brothers, one of his older brothers and a cousin, they played a game and he lost like that, and
yeah, he followed somebody's advice. It just went downhill, and so then they were teasing him, just being fun, and they were like, oh yeah, you shouldn't have listened to him, you totally bombed that. And he's like, no guys, no, it's okay, I'm all good, because now I know for the next game not to do that. Now I can adjust and re-strategize for the next game, so it's all good, we're good. And at the end of the game, he shook their hands, he told them good job. He was the only one that went around everybody. He's like, hey, good game, it was fun playing with you, thank you.
yeah. And that's what we want our kids, right? So that we don't see this ego battles like we're seeing played out in society today. I think that's important. I also think that we have to be careful with the words we choose. I know somebody had posted about changing some word choices and how that motivates, that we've done other videos on that. I mean, persuasion, the art of persuasion it's what we're seeing right now through social media. There's a science to it, it's a social science, and there are people who study how to motivate people through the words and experiences that they shape things with. And as an education, sometimes we come into homeschooling and we think, well, we'll just give them a book. We have to engage it a little bit like this is an individual child on an individual journey, and we can know the direction we're going, but we have to be free to give ourselves permission to be creative and try things, and when things don't work, back up and let our kids know. Like with my son who's working on his emotional intelligence, there's no perfection. There's not going to be a perfect. Let's try different things. Let's see what that does. Oh, there was a trigger. How did that trigger work? And now it's becoming, for him, it's becoming very natural. He really wasn't stirred up, because I talked to him after we talked, and he was actually very in control. He had determined it wasn't something he was gonna get worked up about. So, okay.
Okay, jump into some comments and questions. Mandy said that back to when you're talking about of asking yourself, like, what am I doing as a leader? She said this topic is in the introduction of the book club, Raising Them Up. They were talking about the speck and the log in their eye. If you're interested in joining that, over on the app, you can join in the book club, and they're working through Israel Wayne's most recent book, right?
Yep.
Raising Them Up.
I think you get the first 3 chapters for free. It's in the digital goodies of the app. You can get the first 3 chapters to participate.
Yeah, so it's a fun way to connect with other moms and kind of go through, it's almost kind of like a Bible study in a way. So
yeah, I think so.
It's fun.
Of like-minded people who are in the same spot you're in.
Right. Jess said, I felt humiliation too in math. My teacher actually shamed me and others who struggled. I'm trying to be excited about doing fractions with my oldest, but it's a struggle.
I think even being honest and sharing that, to be able to say to your kids, when I did math, I don't feel like I really had good leadership, learning leadership, and the way that they tried to motivate people was by driving them through pain and shame. And so when I come to these topics, I might struggle, and maybe we can help each other, remind each other, right? Like, let's pray. Lord, give us wisdom. Help us with these concepts that are before us, and become a team. So instead of it just being, well, I have to know this because I'm the parent, make it a partnership. My son, 13, I talked to my sons, actually, like last night I had another conversation with his older brother, and I'm like, I struggle in this area, and I don't think I have a healthy perspective, and you're a thinker, and so help me, walk me through this, just give me some insights. And he does, and I don't always agree with his insights, and I tell him that too, because sometimes I have more perspective, but at the same time, it's more of a, we talked about this earlier, the parenting that we did early on, we have 9 children, we've been parenting for over 30 years, I hope that's right, I'm pretty sure it is. was very, we'll drive you. I'm the boss, you respect me, you do what I say because that's what's going to happen. The parenting style that we have today is much more leadership based and much more, listen, every one of us is on a journey, and I have 20, 30 years of life experience ahead of you, and maybe I can help you, but let's do this journey together, and let me be your mentor and your leader, and I have certain responsibilities. And that doesn't mean that there's never a place for discipline, but it's not all discipline. It's more of a just like this. We're all in different places. So if I can, let's all cross the finish line together.
Yeah, I think moments like what you were talking about with Gabe, when you take him and ask him about different things, it's when you do that. I mean, we all love to be asked for our opinion. I think it makes us feel useful. It makes us feel like our opinion and our way of doing things, like it's valued. You value what we have to say. And so I think when you do that, like that's the feeling. And so it forces us to kind of talk about and articulate certain things that otherwise we wouldn't. Because if you just ask what's going on, I don't know, versus you just asking, hey, I'm struggling with this, like help me out, or however you ask those questions, I think kind of helps us. It takes you down a better pathway mentally than just saying, hey, what's up? Like, what's the problem with this? You know?
Yeah.
And it's been helpful.
I think too, we have to have empathy as parents. Sometimes we approach parenting as an inconvenience or an irritation, but we signed up for this, and my children, my family, I signed up for that. I committed to it when I married their mom, and I committed to it when I became a dad, and that's the role that I play. And so I can be irritated because it's interrupting my Facebook time or the movie or the football game, or I'm stressed, but I have to put in perspective, the most important thing that I have is my family. That's what I'm going to be held accountable for when I stand before the Lord, and I want to make sure that I have empathy. You told a story earlier. You tell it again about when I sent you home.
Oh, our family had gone through something pretty traumatic with our neighbors, and they had lost their son. This was when I was a lot younger, and that whole week was just emotionally draining for everybody, even us younger kids, even if we didn't really realize it or fully understand what was going on. And I had melted down because he finished up he did the funeral, and then a bunch of my older siblings were going to stay and help clean up and all that stuff. Well, I wanted to stay and help clean up and be a part of things and get to hang out with all these people and stuff. But they had my older sister take us home, and I completely melted down. I was like, this is so annoying. Like, I don't want to go with you guys. Like, y'all are lame. Like, let me stay and all this stuff. And I just melted down. And so later that night, she sent me to my room when I got home, my older sister did, to just cool off and whatnot. And then when he got home, I was like, great, I'm going to get in so much trouble for this because like they've had a stressful week, and now coming home, like I'm just going to get punished. And when he came home, he's like, hey, Britt, do you want to go for a ride with me? And I was like, yeah, sure, I guess. And when we did, he didn't really bring it up. We went out and got ice cream. Well, it made me feel so guilty for the way I acted and the way that he like showed love to me after that. And he may have eventually maybe said something, I don't know, but it just made me feel guilty, and he didn't even have to say anything for me to I just went and apologized for the way I acted. So that's always kind of been imprinted on me, that from that moment I feel like you guys kind of made a little bit of a switch in the ways that you handled moments like that.
So I gotta say this without being emotional. The more I understood the concept of mercy and grace by my Heavenly Father, the more I was able to show mercy and grace to my children. I understand being left out and wanting to participate and reacting. I'm sure we had a good reason for it as parents, but for your perspective, it would be hard to understand. God shows me so much mercy and grace. how can I not show that to my children? Now, God also disciplines me because he disciplines those whom he loves, but discipline is done in a way that he's leading us, he's training us, he's preparing us. And in this case, and in so many cases now, there's a lot of times where it's like, you deserve punishment because you know the rules and you know the way we operate, but I'm going to show grace here. And I've explained grace a lot of times in that case. Again, I think we're creating connections. I want that understanding that we have room for growth. We all know that in our family. There is no level of perfection, right? I mean, room for growth is that's my mantra. I'm not perfect. I'm not going to be perfect. I can't achieve perfection, but I can achieve, I can work harder to be better tomorrow than I am today, and I can work harder today to be better than I was yesterday, and that's what I want for my family as well. So I don't even know where I was going.
Well, I had a couple questions for you. Tiffany asked, thoughts on teaching without feeling like everything is on your shoulders, the core subject plus extras like second grade language, PE, music, and art, it all really adds up.
Yeah, so sometimes you can simplify your life, right? Can you combine, is PE, does it have to look like something out of a book, or do you have to do as much? We didn't do group sports, we just couldn't. You have 9 kids and you're running a business and running ministries, we can't, but we can do things together, activities as a family that get us out and about, just a walk every day, exercise, that counted as phys ed. There were other things that we did value, but like for music, I knew how to play instruments. We kind of started playing together as a worship band, and that became our experience, and that was our music, and you guys grew in that. I think that there's ways that you can kind of settle down a little bit, and that's one of the things with masterbooks. We look at homeschooling for the real world. So when you're looking at like math, and people are like, oh, it's got to be pages and pages of math concepts. Do what you need to do, but you don't need to do more than you need to. So kind of find ways to combine things and simplify things. And if something isn't working, don't be afraid to let it go. It may work, it may be awesome, but just not for your family in this season. And then finding ways also to reduce the noise in your own life so that you have peace as well.
A couple more questions over. I'm able to look kind of some of the Facebook questions. Rebecca said, speaking of end goals, what's your opinion on what to do when you're behind, such as not on schedule for the school year, or maybe even just now starting a subject at the new year? Would you try to double up and still get some by the end of the school year? Would you just keep with a daily schedule to not overwhelm the kids and just finish when you finish? Also, do you see any disadvantages to year-round homeschooling?
So our schedules don't have dates, they just have days. So if you miss 2 weeks, we just missed a week of schooling. Just step back into where you last left off. That's real world. Things are going to happen. Family members are going to end up in the hospital, or you're going to have celebrations, you're going to have reunions, you're going to have whatever, and your family is going to have a distraction and step away from education. Keep in mind, what we do schooling for is to learn, right? It's not to check off a box. I know that's what our obligation is to the state, but what we're really trying to do is to learn and teach our kids to be learners. So when life happens, we're still learning, we're still developing, we're still using what we've learned. And when that season ends, then we don't want to delay it. We just jump back into, okay, it's a reset, we get started again. So that would be there. What was the second part of that? Because that was really good. Oh, year-round homeschooling. I think there's merit for year-round schooling because learning is a lifelong endeavor, and I think that even if you don't do the 5 subjects a day, maybe you do 1 or 2 subjects. We've done that in the past a little bit at times where it's too hard to stop schooling for 2 months and then start up again. It was just easier to kind of keep going through the year and a little bit at a time.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about this earlier. for me, it was always, like, if you're worried about overwhelming your student with the overall, like, schedule for the year, just give them to them in chunks. I did better with that because I did see the huge, long list of things I had to get done, and that was overwhelming to me and would stress me out a lot versus when I was given just like, hey, this is this week, we'll just work on this to get this done, and I could check those off. That was something that I could actually accomplish and feel like I did make an accomplishment. That's something that helped.
Yep.
Stacey asks, do you have any special needs kids in your curriculum?
As a family, yes, we have a special needs son who does masterbooks curriculum. We use additional solutions as well, but it's not. It's more because we hit certain levels where we need to repeat, and but we've had really good feedback from families with special needs students using masterbooks because it's not overwhelming. It's more application based and it thinks outside the box. So, yeah, I mean, I think masterbooks definitely has a place in the special needs community. But if you deal with special needs students, you know there is no one size fits all. And so you have to be more creative than some in using the tools to accomplish the job, you know.
Just some encouragement for the people over on Facebook, because I know you can't see the comments over in the app. Sunshine said, all year schooling works for us because having a routine helps us feel less stressed. Hannah Madeline said, encouragement for those who are new to homeschooling. We switched to masterbooks last year from an intense curriculum. My son used to cry just looking at the books. Now, 2 years later with masterbooks, he is eager to learn. He grabbed his books at 7 a.m. today and asked to do schoolwork. Masterbooks has such an awesome... That's where it cuts off. But anyways.
Well, I love that. We used to get a kick out of parents would be like, the kids were quiet in their rooms at night, so we went in and there was a flashlight and they were under the blanket doing their math. And I'm like, that in my experience in school would not have been. I was going to get punished because I was sneaking my math book into my bed at night. But I love that concept. And I think it's because masterbooks is really, you know, a lot of the foundational things like that. Kristen is our curriculum editor and brand manager, is also my wife and Brittany's mom, and then we have an exceptional team in the whole editorial department and the authors that look at going outside the box and homeschooling in the real world. After 30 years of homeschooling, you kind of come to a place where you're like, that curriculum doesn't work in the real world. It doesn't work for families the way it was intended to work in a classroom. And so the curriculum itself is designed to work more holistically with a child in the real world.
Yeah, I got one more question for you.
Okay.
Hey to Jasmine. She said, I have a 6-year-old who cannot sit still. She will do her work, but I mean, she won't even sit still for 5 minutes. Personally, what would or have you done in this instance?
6 years is still very young, and there's a lot of skills that still need to be developed, like stamina, focus, some of those things. So a couple things that I would look at. I don't know anything about situations, so please don't take this as judgment. I would have to look at environment. What are the distractions in the environment? Is this a student who is easily, like, are they playing a lot of video games or watching videos, like YouTube videos and stuff like that? And I know 6 years old is young, but in some families, because of older influences of siblings or influences with older siblings, they may have, like, they're being trained to short bursts of entertainment, so it's difficult. So that would be another thing I would look at. I would look at diet, like, is the diet that you're giving them conducive to a good brain and learning? Then again, I would do short bursts. So begin training them to focus. So maybe the alarm goes off at 9 o'clock and we're going to work for 10 minutes. And when the timer goes off in 10 minutes, we're going to take a break and we're going to run around the house. And we're going to come in and we're going to work 10 minutes. And when that's done, we're going to take a break and run around the house. And maybe we'll get a snack. And kind of train to expand that time out a little bit. But 6 years old is very young, and so sometimes that's where, because they're not sitting there and wanting to learn. I'm 51 years old, and honestly, sitting through a church service that's more than 20 minutes long, it's just painful. And that doesn't mean I don't want to be there and I don't want to learn, but then for me to want my kids to go sit for an hour and do math is almost unfair, right? I'm sitting there doing nothing, listening to somebody talk to me, and I'm in pain because of it. So I think that's another place to have a little bit of empathy with our students. There are probably so many people right now saying, you shouldn't be listening to him. You shouldn't be listening to him. What does mom say? The views and opinions of Randy does not reflect the views and opinions of his family.
Joanne said 6-year-olds are made to move. They need to move. It helps their little brains to develop.
It does.
I saw a really interesting video recently. The lady was saying, the way we ask kids to do things also affects the situation. So she said, if I ask this little girl, like, hey, do you want to go inside? She's going to say no. Or I go, hey, guess what? Why don't we run around the playset real quick and then we'll run inside and grab a snack? Like, she's all of a sudden going to get excited about that versus asking her to go inside. So. Yeah, good point. Good point. I know some people would buy even the mini trampolines. The classroom, the school that we went to had the mini trampolines. And sometimes they would have the kids bounce and do their schoolwork. They would ask math questions and that type of stuff. But some kids just need to move and do. In fact, when I did adult training, we would give out squishy balls, and the kids could do squishy balls sometimes to just let them physically be doing something while they were learning. And that was for adult training, so I know it works with adults. Mandy said, that makes me feel better. LOL, I've been stressed about my 10-year-old son not being able to sit through church services. Oh, Mandy, you have no idea. It's so bad. Even like the pastors give me the evil eye because I begin to act up. Yeah. Nothing's changed. Okay, we good? I saw one more. I know I said one more, but I want to make sure. Tiffany said, my daughter is in kindergarten and we struggled with the place value in math book 1. Should I give her kindergarten math or continue working through math 1 book? If she's struggling with a concept, I wouldn't push it. You could do the kindergarten and just reinforce, say, hey, I know you know this stuff, but we're just going to do it as a reinforcement and a practice, and give her a little bit more time. Place value village requires a little bit more abstract thinking, and so you need the brain to kind of develop there a little bit. Awesome. That's what we got. All right. Good. Hey guys, well hopefully this was a blessing, and hopefully it made some sense, and it gives you something that you can apply today. It doesn't just work with our students, it works also with our family members. For our, those sometimes we have to step back and try to understand what's going on in the house, and what am I doing to contribute to this? Am I leading the way that I want to be led, and empathy and that, because that all impacts too. I think emotional health, if I could create my if I was a superintendent of home education, I would definitely have a course on emotional health, and I would require or ask parents, I wouldn't require because that wouldn't be good, but I would ask parents to take a training in emotional health, and then and teach them how also to teach emotional health to their students, because learning math is easy. Having a mindset that wants to learn math is a challenge. And everything in life, the way we approach, the way we walk into the building first thing in the morning has an impact. You want to know how to affect an organization, a toxic person. Take a toxic person, put it in an organization, and you destroy productivity. I mean, so many studies have been done on the effects of a toxic personality in the workplace. And we want our kids to be able to embrace any situation. And if they have emotional health and they have spiritual health, intellectual health is pretty easy to come by, especially in today's day and age. So, okay. Wait a sec. I would love to do emotional training with my kids. Does Masterbook have any recommendations? And then what was the book you mentioned at the beginning?
It was The End of Average was the name of the book. Don't endorse everything in that book, but the concept of there not being an average is one that I would endorse. Okay. Good. We don't have a course on emotional health and teaching, but doggone it, we probably should.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, guys. God bless you. Have a great weekend. We pray the Lord's blessing on your homeschool and that you enjoy this journey. It doesn't last long, believe me. Enjoy the journey with your children, and you will be blessed. All right. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.